We've probably all seen brands getting dragged on social media because they run an unsuccessful drop. And the fallout from that can be pretty severe. Now you've not only impacted your fans, that collaboration is now problematic. And so when people are feeling that pain, they never want to go through that ever again. On the data side, if you're running a drop with 3.4 million people that show up for 50,000 pairs of sneakers. These people are potential VIPs. They're just not lucky in that moment. And that's an enormous miss. Once we've built up an appointment system online, it kind of naturally leans itself to being used in real life. I kind of like the idea of a stadium filled with people all pointing their phones up to the sky to join a drop exclusively for the people in that venue.
This is going to be really exciting because I'm not super familiar with what you do and how you do it. You're in a very well-known space to the consumer, but not so much maybe to the business owner. So we're definitely going to be picking that apart today. But before we jump in, I'd love to get an origin story from you. Help us build the context as to who you are and how you got all the way to owning a SaaS startup.
Yeah, it's a long and winding road. So as you can tell, Fanfare is LA-based, but clearly my accent's not from around here. So found myself on these shores through a series of fortunate acquisitions and interesting stories. But essentially, I'm an engineer at heart. So my brother came home with a Commodore 64 one day in the 80s, probably late 80s, and I was kind of hooked. The ability to create something from nothing always interested me. We're a family of tinkerers that kind of destroy various things around the home, which I'm sure my parents really appreciated. My dad's watch definitely took the brunt of it every now and again. So found my way through into a place in London that was this 7-person startup. Really interesting place, building this content management solution at the start of Web 2.0. And we got into conversations with Salesforce. We went through this bake-off process with multiple vendors, and they ended up scooping us up in 2007. So one of the first acquisitions that Salesforce did, they were still relatively small, but they kind of picked up the whole team and dropped us in San Francisco. So I spent a few years, good years, working on gnarly systems problems over at Salesforce. Quite a shift from 7 people through into, I don't know how many people it was, but by the time I left, a galactic scale company, and moved down the road to a place called Optimizely, where I took the challenges of scale on the road on the consumer side. So we had these large media companies who had these extraordinarily big spikes in traffic when they had newsworthy events that kept us busy, but kind of learned the ropes of being able to deal with those kind of events at scale. And then moved back with a colleague of mine, came up to San Francisco to talk me through this company Rival that they were starting. And we were definitely on the nose with the name, but our intent was going after the likes of Ticketmaster Access on the live event problem. So how do you ticket an event like a Taylor Swift pre-sale? How do you make sure that the consumers are treated properly in that moment? How do you make sure you don't fall down? How do we try and rule out some of those problems that everyone's been through? Like the bots, the bad actors scooping up tickets, throwing them to the secondary market, the scalpers and so on. So all of those problems we had a good solution to. And then fast forward, start of the pandemic, we were scooped up by Ticketmaster, of all people. So spent a few months there. Interesting times for sure, where all of Ticketmaster's revenue went to zero, but felt like now is the time that we should solve these problems. There's no water in the pipes right now. There's no one buying tickets right now. And then just this frustration growing as I saw that wasn't happening. Like we weren't really tackling the things that I thought we should be tackling. And that's when I left and decided, you know what, I see this problem all over the place of these kind of gnarly launches, ticket on sales, shoe drops, start of the pandemic, like lines around the block for groceries, like all kinds of queuing problems that just are terrible consumer experiences. And on the vendor side, I know that they're just managing this chaos. There's just fires happening on the other side of the fence, and they just don't have the resources to get their arms around there. So decided to spin up Fanfare. We've been going for a few years now. We've gone through a pre-seed raise, and yeah, we're making good progress.
Awesome. Okay, so help us understand what are maybe more details on the problems that you solve and who are you solving them for? What type of clients do you guys manage these issues for?
Yeah, so we've been primarily going after people who are already running drops, who already have issues managing their launch. So, you know, if you're a Supreme, if you're a Nike, if you're an Adidas, they have drops where millions of people will show up for 10,000 sneakers, for example. And if you've ever been in one of those processes, it's clearly not something that's managed incredibly well. Like, it's a really hard problem to solve. I'm not diminishing what they're trying to solve, but having 3 million people show up all at once, having that incentive for people to try and game the system and work around whatever guards you have in place, and then trying to make the most of that moment is not something that even the most well-resourced brands can deal with. And we see a lot of brands reaching for this model, these kind of scarce drops that they do, but without a dev shop attached to them, like with no significant resources that they can actually get their arms around these problems. So that's where Fanfare comes in. We run that process for them. They can set everything up end to end through Fanfare. So from the first announcement all the way to running the actual drop itself. And we'll capture all of the interesting information about those people coming through. So it's really helpful in just making sure that you make the most of that moment, that you don't frustrate your fans. Like, we've probably all seen brands getting dragged on social media because they run an unsuccessful drop. So try and avoid those headaches and try and make the most of those kind of moments.
So it's basically systems, processes, UX, UI to make sure that if someone has a drop and you're supposed to show up, in a certain time frame, that A, the website's not crashing, that B, there aren't bad actors that are forcing a crash, or C, that, a wait room maybe, or a wait list. Like, can you give us some examples of some of the things you guys employ to make sure that these drops, if you will, go well?
Yeah, so people can just take a Fanfare component and just drop that into their store. And then from then we'll manage waitlists. People like to structure these things so that they have their VIPs come in early. They can provide exclusive access to a certain group, and then everyone else can come in later. Like, flipping the bits when that happens is fraught, often goes wrong. So we can set all of that up ahead of time. And then doing things like, if you were close this one time, the next drop, you're going to be first in line. Like, trying to make sure that the consumer experience is solid and does the things that you would expect as a consumer. Like, I'm a loyal fan of Nike. Like, I want to make sure that every time I come in, I'm moved forward in line, or I'm given that exclusive access, or I'm given discounts at the end of the process if I'm unsuccessful. Trying to loop all those things together is helpful to brands. And then on the data side, if you're running a drop with 3.4 million people that show up for 50,000 pairs of sneakers, like, Nike only finds out about the 50,000 people. Like, there's an enormous amount of information that's just been dropped on the floor. Like, these people are potential VIPs. They're just, not lucky in that moment. Mm-hmm. And that's an enormous miss. Like, who are these people? What products would they like to see next? What kind of price range makes sense for the products? What kind of colorway should we do next? Like, those kind of questions you could get answers to from your fans. You can try and engage them in interesting ways. We've had people run like live streams in their drops where they have an influencer or a celebrity come in and talk to their community and try and build that feeling of fandom, even if you're unsuccessful in that drop. So I think there's a ton of things people can do. There's just the headaches that people face when they run a drop like this, that they're always fighting fires first, and then the interesting experience just gets left. So we try and provide a way that brands can reach people, engage people, and try and create that feeling of community with their fans.
When you first devved out your MVP, the first product you put out there, did you solve all the problems you currently solve, or are you guys constantly iterating and updating and adding new solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. We keep building on what we have. The foundation was try and make the actual process of getting through the drop, like the waitlist management, the actual management of the 4 million people showing up, that needs to be incredibly solid. If that's not solid, everything else, all the bells and whistles, is useless. Like, people have had a bad experience. So we needed to make sure that that was solid to start with. But then thinking about this, not just as a checkout experience, but this is an event. This is a marketing event that the brands are creating. So going all the way from that announcement to try and understand when people are coming in, which channels work, when should we time these messages to not overload people. Like, we all get those spam messages and we just ignore them. Like brands just don't know often how to reach people or how often to send these messages to really actually motivate someone to come into an experience. So we can help them with that. So all kinds of interesting things upstream and then downstream. Like you run a Black Friday sale and like you've created some momentum there that you should keep going through into the following year. And often there's no information that allows them to do that. So we kind of, try and close the loop on that.
So do you guys, I guess, how much of the spectrum do you cover? You guys are a SaaS product, but are you also like branching into the organization or the leadership for these types of drops or reveals? Do you have teammates that are more client facing that say, hey, this is what we're doing today, or this is the messaging that we're putting into this flow? Are you guys developing, the email flows and I guess, how far does your service extend?
Yeah, so we try to provide the platform that people can build whatever experience they want to build on. And it's a difficult line to walk, like trying to not venture too far into the consumer's flow that it causes problems for them. Like this is their experience. So we have a lot of brands who are extremely sensitive to the messaging, extremely sensitive to the kinds of things that we show in an experience. So it's our job to provide them with the foundational pieces that they can build the experience they want. We can provide recommendations, like we see that this channel works. You want to send things out on Monday morning at 9 a.m. on Instagram to reach people the best, but it's completely up to them to structure it how they feel they want to structure it.
Whether it's from the get-go or currently, how do you make sure that your clients use the product correctly? Because it's one thing to have an amazing SaaS product, but it's another thing to make sure that the users are educated and getting the full Monty from it, right? I know that can be a problem in your industry. Is that a problem for you guys? Or if so, or if not, how did you mitigate?
Yeah, it's always a difficulty. I think it's a product that kind of fits an interesting but unusual niche. People are not expecting something to provide all of the functionality we provide. So for us, it's been, some education, just kind of listening to our early customers, seeing where, there's a gap, seeing where they maybe, they're not using something as we intended it to, or not using it to its fullest extent, and trying to close that gap with documentation, with walkthroughs in the product. Like our brand marketers are very visual in nature. So like having something that we can show them, like this is how the experience is going to look. This is how it looks in your store. This is the flow that consumers are going to go through. Helps them to understand what the process is and like really wrap their heads around this thing. So it's been more like a show, don't tell for a lot of our customers. So we've built up some functionality that allows them to preview, to walk through the process even before it's live, and then to see and feel what the consumer is going to feel.
Gotcha. Okay. So I want to turn a little more towards the internal side of the business. And when you got started, when you decided to do this, were you solopreneur? Did you have partners? And then you mentioned raising capital and seed rounds. Kind of fill me in. How did you really get this thing off the ground? And then I've got some questions on raising capital.
Yeah, so solo founder, first time founder. So I've been through the startup journey. I've kind of done a Goldilocks tour of company sizes, like 2 very early stage startups. So I've seen people go through the machinations, but never been through it myself. So this was bootstrapped in the early days. So I was fortunate enough that I could take some time, really think about how I was going to solve this problem, start talking to people and understand what their pain points were, whether this was going to be something that could scale up, whether it was going to be something that was kind of VC scale. So understand what the funding path was going to be, and then getting those early customers, early signups. And again, like starting talking to VCs fairly early. Like it's a structured process that we went through. I had my checklist, my giant spreadsheet of all of the people I wanted to talk to, how I could try and use my network to try and find access to those people. It's a challenge. Warm intros are like invaluable. If you can find those people in your network who can connect you, those people are invaluable. So really talking with people early, understanding like where their pain points might be, what narrative was going to work for VCs. They're not sneakerheads usually. There's the occasional one or two. So you have to find something that really resonates with them. And it might not be like your ICP. It might be something that's a little bit further down the roadmap, but finding that message that's going to work with them was really helpful. So we bootstrapped for a while, went through an incubator for a little while, and then just started the pre-seed fundraising process, which we closed out 12 months ago.
How did you know how much you needed to raise?
This was really figuring out like where we wanted to be for the next raise. So how much runway did we want? How much runway did we need? What kind of milestones do we need to hit to be able to raise a seed? And then who do we need? The staffing is really the most expensive part. So who do we need to get us to those milestones? Who do we need on sales, marketing, engineering to be able to do that? So it's really just starting with a goal in mind and then working your way back and figuring out exactly like where you need to be, how much does that equate to? And from there, I mean, talking with VCs, like you have to make some adjustments. We went up and down. A lesson from one of our incubator partners was when you get on a call, don't actually give a hard number. Just kind of get a feel in that moment for where they're sitting, because sometimes they'll drift around, and if you commit to a particular number, like it may be too early for them, too late for them, like all of those things can be rolled in. So it's better to kind of leave it open.
Got it. Yeah, I figured at a SaaS company, one of the major expenses is going to be people. What does your team look like now, and what did it look like as you started scaling up?
Yeah, so we filled out engineering. So we have some engineering help. We've used a lot of agencies and consultants to fill in gaps, especially at this stage. Like we're moving around. So we may have more marketing requirements through a particular period. Like we're coming into the holidays right now. We need to ramp that up, and then we need to ease it back down afterwards. So a lot of engineering to try and, like, I'm an engineer at heart, but I can't be in the code all the time. That's not where I should be. So we definitely needed people to fill that role quickly. And then on the marketing side, pulling in people like a part-time CRO and so on, just to fill the gaps, to make sure we're in the right direction and that we have some capacity for me to be able to go and talk to customers and sell the product.
So tell me more about your ICP, your ideal client profile. I know you're B2B2C essentially. So who are your ideal clients, or the types of clients that you work with? And I'm really curious about how you market to them to keep your pipeline full, to keep new business coming in.
Yeah, so we're focused on small to medium size apparel, fashion brands. So these are the people who are already very familiar with drops, the drop model. Like we're not selling them on the idea of running these types of events. So going after those folks, the people who are really feeling pain from their customers, like they run these things regularly and they always have some kind of issue that they're just managing. And we find ourselves talking to brand marketers, the actual store owners, the founder often of these smallish brands. When there's very few people you engage with, like it's an easier conversation, I think. You're not navigating through a giant, like a Nike, for example. Like you're going to spend multiple months just trying to figure out if you're speaking to the right people or not. So that's been really helpful, like focusing on people who are feeling immediate pain and trying to, walk them through the process and get them up and running as quickly as possible. I think from there, finding next verticals that are also feeling this pain. So luxury, collectibles, like there's all kinds of different areas that scarce products are going through a painful consumer process. So it's trying to figure out like which vertical to focus on next, and then been very thoughtful and methodical as we go through those verticals. Like we have conversations with all kinds of folks. We can't necessarily serve them all right now. So we have to be very careful of the kinds of consumers that we go after and the kind of businesses we go after. So it's been focused on people who are feeling pain.
How do you keep your pipeline full, like with these types of businesses coming in? And I guess maybe I should lead with the first question of, once you sign on a client, are they using you constantly, or are you project-based? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a monthly subscription or annual subscription. So they switch us on. They get access to all of the data that we collect in perpetuity. So it's useful information to have around at all times. They're usually running, weekly, monthly drops, so they're using us frequently. I actually, maybe how we reach people and how we fill the pipeline. Maybe I can talk about some of the mistakes we made
Sure.
along the way, like some of the learnings. So, I think a lot of people with an engineering background, they tend to lean more on, I'm just going to build this amazing product and it's going to sell itself, right?
Yep.
That's always the mistake
The
that technical
age-old
founders
adage.
make.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew that, but I still did that. So even if you know that, you have to absolutely be like talking with customers as much as you can. There's a great book someone recommended called The Mom Test, which is a book that talks about even if you're asking questions and you're going through the motions, you can still ask completely the wrong questions and just get validation from people who just don't want to be mean to you, right? People generally are kind-hearted and they will reaffirm your beliefs and so on, and that's not helpful. You actually want people to shoot you down and be very critical and find the gaps and really kind of pressure test what you're building. So finding those people who are going to give you that feedback and just being willing to listen and knowing how to get those answers has been really important. And for us, it's been finding a way of talking to our customers in a language that makes sense, through a medium that makes sense, like putting out like a fancy PRD with deep technical detail is absolutely not the way to reach our customer base. They're very visual. They're very focused on their brand's image. So if you can provide the previews so they can see what it looks like, they can walk through the process and, doing things like this, like actually having a face around a particular product, like that's, I think, incredibly helpful to us. So it was really, some mistakes trying to reach people in the wrong places. Often the best place to reach people is, when they're having a moment or they're looking to have a moment. On Instagram might be the best place for us to reach people. Like the brand owners tend not to be people who spend an enormous amount of time on LinkedIn, for example. That's not the way of reaching people. So really finding like the language and the channel that works for them.
And then do they know they have a problem, but do these clients or prospects at the time, do they know there's a viable solution like you out there? And I guess maybe the deeper question is there a lot of competition in what you do to solve these problems?
There are a few people who do what we do. They're mostly focused on the actual queuing problem. So if you've ever been in a Ticketmaster queue, for example, that's a vendor that they use for all of that stuff. So there are people out there, but they tend to be a little starchy. Like they're mostly focused on that queuing problem and just that queuing problem in isolation. There's no one treating it like an event, like a way of marketing to people. They treat it just as the final conversion, like managing that final conversion, not as a way of reaching people or trying to understand people. And that's our goal, is to work with smallish, medium-sized brands on creating experiences. And I don't think when people are going through this pain, it's such a painful moment. It's not like, they fell over for a couple of hours on a Tuesday afternoon. Like they fell over at their most vital, important moment. And the fallout from that can be pretty severe. They can get dragged, like they feel that in the moment. Like they really want to bring some collaboration out into the world. And now you've not only impacted your fans, like that collaboration is now problematic. And there's all kinds of things that come along with that. So when people are feeling that pain, like it's a really urgent thing that they want to fix. They never want to go through that ever again. So it's definitely a strong push. I think where we're going to have to do some more education is in the areas around like luxury, for example. Like it's an incredibly powerful way to reach people. If you're a mez, for example, like you have a 4 or 5 year wait list for your products, like that's where you want to be. You want to have that feeling of such brand loyalty that you're willing to wait in line for a number of years to get your product. You can go after that by bringing out scarce products, by building a community over time, and we can be kind of foundational to that, but there's definitely going to be some education there.
How do you make sure that Fanfare is in front of these people at that very specific time of need?
So we try to get our marketing material out there into the world, like around the places that they'll see it if there's a sneaker community, for example, like trying to get our marketing material around those so we can be there when they're searching for this, or just, in passing as they see someone else do a drop and they see it go successfully, like we can be there for them. So that's been the most helpful for us. Honestly, there's a small group of founders and brands and so on that talk with each other. They may not talk about the ins and outs of their business, but they definitely talk about like when things go well, when things don't go well, they hear about it. So it's been some word of mouth too between those brand owners.
Okay. And then when you guys started, proving out the concept, getting the results, can you provide a couple of examples, whether they're recent or if they were closer to when you guys were started up? What were some of those success stories, and what made those success stories far different from possibly the failure stories that they had before working with you?
Yeah, we worked with a streetwear brand a little while ago. This was one of the first in real life drops that we did. It has a special place in my heart because of that. Some scar tissue there too. But it was a large brand, large following, and they'd had issues with their in real life drops in the past. They'd had so many people showing up to their pop-ups that the police had to shut them down. They had security issues. And with that came all kinds of negative press, issues in the community that they launched these things in, like bad times for them. So we were coming into a pop-up, like a drop that they were doing. It was a collaboration with Levi. They were expecting to have the same issues, like large multi-block lines, security concerns, like all kinds of problems. And they wanted to create this experience where there was still a line. There was still some feeling like people were excited for the product, but not chaos. They wanted to avoid the just carnage that they'd run into in the past that meant them shut them down. So we ended up creating an experience where people could go, they could scan in, they could grab an appointment slot, they could go off. This was at a conference, so they could go off and do whatever they were going to do, grab some lunch, and then come back and immediately go through the line. No problems. We managed to like even give the people running the booth like a 15-minute coffee break, which they'd never had in an event like this. And for me, we both saw the vendor going through these experiences and also like talking with actual customers, like talking with like Gen Z consumers, as basically you've added a kind of hurdle into the process, but hearing their feedback of like, oh, this is great. I can just go off and do my thing. Cool. That's much better than standing in line for 5 hours or camping out overnight or doing whatever I was going to do otherwise. So that was a really cool experience. We're definitely going to push more on the in real life. We're in LA. This is a great place to do that. I kind of like the idea of a stadium filled with people all pointing their phones up to the sky to join a drop exclusively for the people in that venue. So we have the World Cup finals coming up. We've got the Olympics coming up. So lots of opportunities for stuff like that.
Wow. Okay. So let's dig out that rabbit hole a little bit with in real life versus the online drops and where your SaaS product, software falls in there between the real world and the online world. What does that look like?
Yeah. So essentially underneath, it's the same mechanic, right? You're still queuing people. You're still grabbing an appointment slot for drops. Like we're still selecting people randomly to award them the product. It's just a different flavor of that same event. So for us, it was trying to figure out like exactly how are people going to circumvent this system? How are people going to try and game this system? It's very different. In real life, there are no bots showing up in real life, but you have other issues, people like taking screenshots of things and trying to blag their way into the pop-up. So trying to find the best way to deal with these kind of events looks very differently in real life. And we've been tweaking it and adjusting it. And I think we have a good process around that now. But yeah, I think for the in real life drops, there's a lot of scope and interesting things that we can do around that. But the online drops are just, the issues of scale there are so significant. Like you're never going to get 3 million people physically turning up to a location all at once, right? But you can easily get that with an online drop. So there's just different problems to solve. Same foundational mechanic. Like once we've built up an appointment system online, it kind of naturally leans itself to being used in real life. But there's all kinds of opportunities in real life that are interesting to us, like restaurant reservations, like the hot new restaurant. Trying to get a booking for those things is, I mean, in LA, you're waking up at midnight every day to try and check to see if more tables are available, and if they're not, it's just pain. So I feel like there's all kinds of things that we can do there.
For each customer you have, is there a certain level of customization, or is the platform, is it ready to rock and roll for any type? Like you said, you could have 3 million people that show up for an online drop. Does that require a different level of attention or software? Or I'm not a software guy, so I don't know. But is there a special level of customization that's involved, or is it all one size fits all?
Yeah, it's one size fits all. So we have different tiers depending on like how many people you're expecting to send notifications to and so on. But the platform underneath is exactly the same. And we've even added a Shopify integration fairly recently where you can just kind of flip the switch, drop our components into your store, and you're off to the races. So you can customize that to make it look and feel exactly like your store. There's some AI goodness that we're rolling in to the next version of that to help us do that. But yeah, it's your experience, it's your brand, so you should be able to customize all of the aspects of what we're doing.
How do you do your pricing? And especially when you were starting out, how did you settle on how to price your SaaS product?
More listening to early customers. I mean, there was, my feeling initially was monthly subscription and then some usage component, but we're going to have to figure out exactly what that usage component is. Is it some percentage of the final take? Is it some usage-based component linked to people coming in or people been notified? Or there's all kinds of different things that we could tweak there. What we've landed on right now is the ability to like put you into different tiers based on how you're expecting the number of people to show up, the number of notifications that go out, but we stay away from that final take. So if you run a drop and you're expecting a few million people to show up, that's a significant event for you and that's a significant event for us. So there's some cost attached with that. But if you're running like, a drop of 10 items and, these are high-end luxury things that you're selling, like you shouldn't pay a premium for that. So we've tried to adjust. It's never fully settled at this stage. Like you should never, I think, be dogmatic about pricing in particular. So we're definitely still listening to customers and trying to, find the best path.
So you said there's tiers to the software. Can you kind of give us an idea of what your pricing looks like per tier?
Yeah, so it's $100 a month for the base tier. So if you want to manage a wait list, if you want to manage an experience and you want to craft something for those experiences, like that's all you need to get up and running. The larger tier definitely allows you a lot more flexibility in how you're going to use us. So API integrations, Klaviyo integration, if you want to pull from an external source and use that to drive like an audience, like an exclusive access experience, like those are $300. And then on into the enterprise tier. So that's for the people who have the 3 million people showing up. Like there's all kinds of different flavors of that. Like maybe you have a ton of people show up, but not a lot of products. Maybe you don't send a ton of notifications. So that's more bespoke. And that's more like working with the brand to figure out what makes sense. Like we don't want to, completely price us out of a deal just because we're being dogmatic on the usage there. So that's more of a one-off.
I want to zoom back out a little bit here and kind of talk about starting a SaaS business in general. For anybody listening out there today who might be in the process of starting a SaaS business or they've got an idea for one, can you share the biggest pitfall or the thing you need to avoid most or consider the most, spend the most time considering when you're thinking about opening a SaaS business that, in your experience, either helped or hindered you?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely, for me, that products focus was definitely something that hindered me in the early stages. Like I should have spent way more time just calling people, just going door to door through stores and trying to understand exactly how they would use something like this, the pain that they were facing, and try and get something up and out early and just kind of iterate on that. So I think that's one. I think in the raising process too, like just trying to understand like what it is VCs are looking for and whether you're a good fit for venture capital, because there's a few companies, especially through the incubator, they're good companies, but they're just not venture companies. They're not something that VCs are going to be interested in a 10-year period. So you can burn a lot of time just talking with people who they're never going to get there on that product. And this is time that you should be spending selling and reaching customers and building up a solid consumer base. And I see a lot of people make that mistake. Like, it feels like the natural path. Like, that's the thing that we should be going towards. But if you're not like a company that's going to get to like venture scale, then, you know, it's going to be a difficult conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things. I think that's the case for any type of business or service business, regardless, is you got to go out and sell. You know, if you don't have a client base, or if you don't even have proof that there's a market need, right? That's part of what you're selling first is, hey, do you need this? And if you do, can you tell me exactly what you need, right? And then you go design the solution. I think that's kind of the key to everything is you got to have people who want it.
Absolutely. And, you know, from my background, we'd been working in live events. So I felt like we already had a customer that was settled, right? But it wasn't the same customer. Like, when I wasn't going after the, you know, SoFi stadiums of the world, like that was just not someone I was going to reach in the immediate term. Like, the way that smaller brands are going to use this is very different. And understanding that early and getting things in front of them as quickly as possible so that you can just iterate on that is way better than just kind of, you know, sitting down in a smoking jacket and a pipe and trying to figure out between the five of you what's going to work and what's not going to work. Like, you've no idea how customers are going to use it, misuse it, misunderstand it. So you really just need to get that feedback early.
So as we round it out here, what's the long-term plan for Fanfare? Are you building it up and having it be sellable? Is there different iterations you see coming down the pike that are even bigger and better than what you have? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, like, we're tapping into something that's kind of an innate human trait. Like, we all lust after the scarce products. We all want to be part of a larger community. Like, we all want to be a sneakerhead or a Swiftie, right? There are names for these people. Like, the strong communities always form around these things. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to build this as a business that provides for these moments, like, it is the platform of choice for all of these different types of events, all of these different types of launch. But I see that beyond this, like, going out and like carving out a way that people can actually discover these things, that brands can be discovered too. The way that we could package these things up and provide like a vertical focused way of like a marketplace almost for these types of products is really interesting. And actually just the tooling has moved so far in the last 12 months. There's all kinds of things that we're exploring about using AI and using some of the tools that are available to be able to craft experiences for people who not necessarily have those skills. Like, if you have an audience that you foster online, like, you may want to get some merch out into the world to reach them in that way, but you have no good way of doing that. If we can provide that to you and it's easy and quick to set up and you get real value from it, I think there's enormous value in that too.
Awesome. Well, Michael, this has been a pleasure. We're up against time here, so I know I got to let you get going, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time and knowledge today. I want to make sure that anybody out there listening today, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn about Fanfare, or maybe they need your help, what are the best ways to do so?
Yeah, I think email me directly, like michael@fanfare.io. I'm constantly on LinkedIn for my sins, so please reach out. There are not many Michael Dodsworths in the world, thankfully, so you could find me through there and grab some of my time. We've actually started putting case studies and the to-dos, the do-not-dos, product launches and drops. There are countless examples that we can pull from, so if you're interested in seeing some of the ins and outs of some of these events and what happens behind the scenes, please head over to the Fanfare blog and check those out.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you again. Really appreciate it. And best of luck to Fanfare and everything that the rest of this year holds for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.